AI search engine Perplexity is raising at a $500 million valuation, and the Frontier Model Forum has started an AI safety fund. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown Brief, all the AI headline news you need in around 5 minutes. We kick off today with a report from The Information that the AI search and research company Perplexity is raising a fresh round of capital at a $500 million valuation. Now, this is a company that raised funding just 7 months ago at a $150 million valuation, so this is up 3x in 7 months. The company is currently generating around $3 million in annual recurring revenue, giving this a huge valuation multiple of around 150x ARR. Now, of course, venture capitalists aren't usually thinking that strictly about things like ARR, but it is a notably high number. As someone on Twitter said, AI valuations are still in 2021. Now, what's interesting about Perplexity, and why I wanted to focus on it, is that a big theme that we're discussing in today's show, as you'll see from the main episode, is around user interface, user experience, and just usability. Perplexity is interesting because it has leaned super strong into developing an actual product around AI-powered search that is different and blissful to use. So just as a for example, I did a quick search this morning, who is Nathaniel Whitmore? The results come back with sources, so you know where it's drawing this information from, and then a summarized answer. Nathaniel Whitmore is an independent strategy and communications consultant for leading crypto companies. He's also the creator of the Breakdown Network, which includes The Breakdown, the world's biggest daily crypto podcast, Bitcoin Builders, and the AI Breakdown. Nathaniel has been a principal at Learn Capital and was on the founding team of Change.org. He founded a program design center at his alma mater, Northwestern University, that helped inspire the largest donation in the school's history. Yada, yada, yada. This is all correct, by the way. It also shows where the sourcing actually came from. Now, one of the things that I love is that then it suggests further questions. One of the questions it suggested was, what is the Breakdown Network? So I said, sure, let's do that. Once again, it gives sources, Twitter, my podcast hosting service, the podcast on Apple itself, and a site called Listen Notes. The summarization, the Breakdown Network is a media network created by Nathaniel Whitmore that includes the Breakdown, Bitcoin Builders, and the AI Breakdown. Its next recommended question was, what other podcasts are part of the Breakdown Network? And from there, what is the most popular episode? Now, it wasn't until the most popular episode that it came up a little short, although of course it doesn't really have access to that information because there's no publicly available information that it can pull from. Its response when it couldn't figure things out was, unfortunately, I could not find any specific information on the most popular episode of the Breakdown podcast, but it did provide the number of episodes that have been published as of October 2nd. Anyways, this is barely scratching the surface of what this app can do. When you upgrade to Pro, you can use different models, including Claude 2 or GPT-4. You have more access to what they call their Copilot Boost, which produces even better information. And I know many people who, when it comes to research, default to Perplexity versus something like ChatGPT, even though the underlying models are from other companies. In that, this also kind of breaks the trend that we've been seeing of investors moving away from companies that are wrappers on top of models, and shows just how valuable the right user experience can be. Next up today, a new $10 million AI safety fund and a new executive director for the Frontier Model Forum. Now, first of all, a reminder of what the Frontier Model Forum is. This was announced a couple of months ago and is an industry body, a collaboration between OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and Microsoft that is designed to promote safe and responsible development of advanced AI systems and facilitate information sharing between both these companies as well as with policymakers. The other goal is to identify best practices for responsible development. And effectively, the way that most people interpreted this is that the competitive pressure that these companies are under to beat one another and have the most advanced models is so intense that the Frontier Model Forum is some small effort to create the counterflow and an actual collaboration between the companies when it comes to these very important issues of safety and responsible development. Well, to help with that, they announced the first executive director of the forum, Chris Messerol. Messerol was most previously the director of artificial intelligence and emerging technology at the Brookings Institution. Now, alongside this, they also announced a $10 million AI safety fund, which is a collaboration with a number of philanthropic partners as well, to, quote, advance research into the ongoing development of the tools for society to effectively test and evaluate the most capable AI models. They say that the fund will support independent researchers from around the world affiliated with academic institutions, research institutions, and startups. Further, they write, the primary focus of the fund will be supporting the development of new model evaluations and techniques for red teaming AI models to help develop and test evaluation techniques for potentially dangerous capabilities of frontier systems. So, a couple things to say about this. First of all, I think unmitigatedly it's a good thing to have more research dollars on these areas. I think that the disparity between the amount of funding on how to advance models as compared to the amount of money spent on how to make these models safely is hugely challenging. But that sort of brings me to my second point, which is that this $10 million seems so tiny, especially because it's not presented as $10 million to sort of test and learn with the possibility of more. It's just so tiny. I mean, it's 2 or 3 days of what Apple is spending on training their model right now, for example. It feels like there does just need to be more capital in this area. But again, I think it's good that there are these efforts starting. I'd just like to see even more of them. Now, speaking of capital and OpenAI, an interesting story in the information today. On the one hand, OpenAI has been the definitive leader when it comes to advanced models. But at the same time, that has come at a cost, a literal cost. Using OpenAI tools and the GPT-4 API is extremely expensive. And according to this article, a lot of the customers who were formerly some of OpenAI's biggest are now looking for less expensive options. That includes companies like Salesforce and Wix. Now, interestingly, in addition to just buying AI services from other cheaper competitors, they're also apparently buying OpenAI software through Microsoft because they get discounts with bundling their purchase with other products. Apparently, based on the terms of Microsoft and OpenAI's deal, the lion's share of that revenue goes to Microsoft. So it still is, once again, a problem for OpenAI. Now, this Microsoft OpenAI deal I think will be studied for a long time, but the information gave a few details. Holding aside Microsoft taking a bigger piece of the revenue when customers are buying through Azure, just in general, Microsoft gets 75% of OpenAI's theoretical profits until their $10 billion investment is paid back, and 49% of profits after that until it gets to a predetermined cap. With Microsoft's earnings report yesterday, we learned that 18,000 customers are now buying OpenAI software through Azure, which is up from 11,000 in August. Good for OpenAI, but also a challenge, given that they see so much less of that revenue because it's through Microsoft. It's also not just big companies. Smaller developers are also making the switch. The information piece uses the story of Pete Hunt, who's the founder of tools like Dagster and Summarize.tech. Previously, he had been using OpenAI's GPT 3.5 model, but recently switched over to Mistral 7B, which is an open source model. His API costs went from more than $2,000 a month to less than $1,000 a month, and apparently users haven't complained about a change in quality. Now, all of this gets back to what we might see at OpenAI's Dev Day on November 6th. One of the hints is that there might be some cost-related announcements, and it certainly seems like that could be important, given the shifting sands of the AI space. Now, speaking of Microsoft's earnings report, both Microsoft and Google parent Alphabet reported earnings yesterday, and as MarketWatch put it, Microsoft and Alphabet results show Wall Street only cares about AI. Wall Street seems to have a sense that AI is helping Microsoft's cloud business more than it is helping Google's. The TLDR on this is that Google's cloud business grew by the smallest amount last quarter since 2019, whereas Microsoft's cloud business grew even more than analyst estimates. Azure had 28% growth, which was above both the company's own forecast and the 25.6% growth that analysts were modeling. On the news, Microsoft rose 4% in after-hours trading, while Alphabet shares were down 6%. Moving over to the policy world for just a minute, we've talked a lot recently about the increasing U.S. prohibitions on exporting chips to China and China-aligned places, and Nvidia is now saying that the U.S. is speeding up those export curbs in ways that are potentially challenging. Whereas the restrictions had been supposed to come into play 30 days from October 17th when the measures were initially unveiled, instead they went into effect on Monday. In other words, 6 days after they were unveiled instead of 30 days. The question now, of course, and the one that Wall Street will be watching, is whether this actually impacts Nvidia and AMD's bottom lines. There is a lot more to talk about in the policy world this week. Chuck Schumer held his second closed-door summit to help the Senate learn about AI, featuring some very different opinions from people like techno-optimist Mark Andreessen on the one hand, and Future of Life Institute President Max Tegmark on the other. At some point this week, we will do a full breakdown of any information we actually got from those sessions and what it suggests about the state of the US policy conversation. For now, though, that is where we will wrap the brief. Up next, the main AI breakdown.